I'm Lauren Bennett, 31 years old, and I never imagined that coming home a day early would unravel everything I thought I knew about family. The flight back from Chicago landed ahead of schedule, and all I wanted was a hot shower and my own bed. Instead, I found a street packed with parked cars and a banner hanging across my living room wall that read, "Family means forever." There were kids screaming in my hallway, strangers wearing my slippers, and someone had taped a paper name tag to my bedroom door. And before I could set my suitcase down, I realized my mother and brother had been planning this for months right under my nose. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever come home to something you never agreed to. I should probably back up just a little. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Boston, the kind of neighborhood where front lawns were trimmed just so, and everyone knew who brought what to the potluck. My parents, Diane and Jack Bennett, raised us to be polite, responsible, and above all, grateful. Kevin, my older brother, was always better at the likable part. He played baseball, had an easy laugh, and somehow always knew how to win people over, even when he didn't deserve it. When I was 10, I wanted to be a doctor. By the time I turned 16, I was already volunteering at the local hospital, shadowing nurses on weekends. I liked being useful. I liked knowing that something I did might matter to someone else. It wasn't glamorous, and it sure didn't get the same applause Kevin got for catching a fly ball, but it felt real. Kevin got B's and C's. My parents threw him a pizza party. I brought home straight A's, and they'd say, "Well, that's what we expect from you." My dad, before he passed away, used to leave me little notes, folded slips of paper tucked into my bag before a big test or a college interview. "Keep going. You've got this." He was quieter than my mom, but when he said something, I believed it. When he died 5 years ago, something shifted. The house felt emptier, even with all of us still in it. That's when Kevin suggested we split the mortgage. He and his wife, Stephanie, would take the first floor, I'd live upstairs, and Mom could settle into the converted garage apartment. On paper, it looked like a solution. I had just secured a medical research fellowship, and it meant I could live close to Mom while still focusing on my work. We signed the paperwork, split responsibilities, drew firm lines about privacy. My attorney, Barbara, said, "Put everything in writing, even with family." I didn't argue. For a while it worked. I traveled off in conferences, research grants, lab rotations. Kevin and Stephanie threw dinner parties I was always invited to, but never around for. And Mom, she dropped by unannounced, rearranged my cabinets, left folded laundry on my desk. "I don't need an appointment to see my daughter," she'd say. I didn't push it. I kept showing up to Sunday dinners when I could. Smiled through conversations that always circled around Kevin's latest insurance numbers or the couple's new kitchen backsplash. Last Christmas, I had a research paper featured in a major medical journal. Nobody brought it up. But when Kevin won a regional sales award, Mom printed out the certificate and taped it to the fridge. 3 months ago, when I got accepted to present at a high-level medical workshop in Chicago, I texted Kevin the dates and asked him to keep an eye on things. "No problem," he replied. "Have a good trip. House will be quiet that weekend." That message kept echoing in my head as I stood in my doorway, suitcase still in hand, watching second cousins and distant aunts take selfies in my living room. There were crock pots on my kitchen counter, family photos taped across the walls. Most of them didn't even include me. And then I saw it. The Carter Bennett family tree printed on foam board, proudly displayed on the mantel. Certain names highlighted in gold. Mine wasn't one of them. I hadn't even put my keys down when my mother appeared from the dining room. Arms open, smiling like this was all perfectly normal. "What are you doing home today? We thought you were flying in tomorrow." I looked at her, then at Kevin, who'd come in from the kitchen with a tray of drinks. And all I could think was, this wasn't a mistake. It was never meant for me. Kevin stood next to Mom, his smile stretched tight, almost like it had been rehearsed. "Great to see you, sis," he said, balancing a tray of drinks. "Surprised we decided to have a little family gathering." I looked past him at the living room. Every inch was filled with people. Some I barely remembered, others I didn't recognize at all. "A little gathering?" I asked, stepping inside. "There must be 100 people here." 99, Stephanie chimed in from the kitchen, smiling like she'd just revealed a punchline. "We've been planning the Carter Bennett family reunion for months." The word months stuck in my mind as I slipped off my shoes and set my suitcase against the wall. Months of planning, dozens of invitations, and no one had mentioned it to me, not once. From across the room, someone called out, "Is that Jack's daughter? My goodness, last time I saw you, you were about yay high." It was Aunt Edith, my dad's aunt from Florida. She walked over, giving me a quick once-over before beaming. "Your brother's been such a wonderful host," she said. "Toured us all through the house, showed off the renovations. Said you're hardly home with work and everything." I didn't answer. My attention shifted as more comments started drifting my way. "Thanks again for letting us use your place," Uncle Paul said as he passed by with a plate of pasta. "Loved staying in your room," Aunt Carol added cheerfully. "So cozy." "My room." I excused myself and made my way up the stairs to my second-floor apartment. The door was unlocked. Inside, it was unrecognizable. Air mattresses filled the office. Suitcases were stacked in corners. My bed had been used fresh sheets, but not mine. Drawers were cracked open. Furniture rearranged. Children's artwork taped over my framed research certificates. I stood still for a moment, just looking. It didn't feel like my space anymore. Then came the text. "How was the flight? Did you make it home okay?" It was from Madison. I didn't answer right away. Kevin knocked and slipped into the room without waiting for an invite. He closed the door behind him, his posture shifting. "Look, I can explain." He started rubbing the back of his neck. I sat on the edge of my bed and waited. "It started with just talking about bringing the local family together," he said. "Then Aunt Patricia suggested inviting the Florida folks, and it kind of snowballed. We figured with your conference the timing worked out. Honestly, we thought you'd be back tomorrow." I kept quiet. He kept going. "It's not like we were trying to hide anything. We just didn't want to bother you while you were busy. You told me the house would be quiet," I said, "that nothing was happening this weekend." He shifted his weight again. "That might have been a mix-up. I didn't mean anything by it." The door opened and Mom walked in. Stephanie followed, arms folded. "What's going on?" Mom asked. "We have guests downstairs. I was just asking why no one told me this reunion was happening in my home," I said. "It was a last-minute thing," Mom replied, waving a hand. "We didn't want to interrupt your important work. Last-minute people booked flights 6 months ago. Ryan told me he was looking forward to this since Christmas." Mom frowned. "Well, you're always so wrapped up in your research. We figured it was easier this way." "You mean easier to leave me out?" Stephanie jumped in. "You're hardly ever around anyway. You wouldn't have wanted to help with all the planning." I looked at Kevin. "So instead of asking, you scheduled it while I'd be gone and hoped I wouldn't find out." "That's not fair," Kevin said quickly. "We were going to clean everything up before you got back, including removing people from my bedroom, my things, my bathroom." "They're family," Mom said. "Most of them can't climb stairs. We had to put them somewhere." I stood up and walked toward my closet, and no one thought to let me know. They didn't answer. "You're taking this too personally," Mom said. "You never join in family things anyway." "That's because I'm never included in the first place," I said, opening the closet door. Behind a pile of luggage, something caught my eye, an envelope poking out. I pulled it free. Inside was a stack of documents, credit card statements, refinance paperwork, and a letter denying Kevin's loan application. I said nothing, just placed the folder back where I found it. Kevin cleared his throat. "While we're talking, Stephanie and I were wondering if you'd consider selling us your half of the house. I looked at him. We're thinking about starting a family, Stephanie added. You're barely here. Before I could answer, Stephanie's mom called up the stairs asking for help settling a family trivia question. Mom gave me a long look. We should get back to the guests, she said. Try not to make a scene. This is important to everyone. They filed out, leaving me alone again. Downstairs, the noise resumed music, laughter chairs scraping against the floor. Through the window, I could see more relatives arriving, carrying pies and casserole dishes. I opened my closet again. This time I reached for a small overnight bag and started packing. Toiletries, work files, a few changes of clothes. Then I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. My bedroom, the air mattresses in the office, the broken perfume bottles on the bathroom floor. Everything was dated and time-stamped. A soft knock came at the door. I opened it and found Aunt Grace standing there. I thought I might find you up here, she said gently. Can I come in? I stepped aside and she walked in, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. I had no idea you weren't told about the reunion, she said. I asked Kevin and your mom. They told me you'd given your blessing. I kept packing. I overheard a conversation last night, she said quietly. Kevin and Stephanie were talking to a financial advisor in the kitchen. Something about investment properties not working out. Credit cards. They sounded cornered. I nodded. Aunt Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I brought this for you. It was meant for the gift exchange tomorrow, but I think you should have it now. Inside was a gold locket. I opened it. One side held a tiny photo of me and Dad on my graduation day. The other was empty. He mailed me that picture, she said. Told me it was the proudest day of his life. I didn't say anything. As she stood to leave, she paused. Whatever you decide, your father saw your worth. Don't let anyone make you forget that. After she left, I zipped the bag closed and looked around one last time. Downstairs, someone started a round of karaoke. I could hear my name mentioned faintly in the background. I sent Madison a quick message. Family emergency. Need a friend tonight. Can I call you? Her reply came right away. Of course. Call any time. I grabbed my bag, walked down the stairs, and past a group of cousins without a word. In the kitchen, Stephanie was giving instructions to a line of relatives. We're just setting up dinner, she said when she saw me. Can you grab a few folding chairs? Actually, I said, keeping my voice steady, I have a few urgent work emails to handle. I'll be stepping out for a bit. She smiled. Oh, no problem. We've got everything under control. As I walked out the door, I heard Kevin's voice from the living room talking to someone about real estate. Once the paperwork goes through, he said we'll have the whole house. Then we can finally renovate the second floor. He spoke like it was already done. But I had just begun. I didn't go to Madison's that night. She offered her husband was making lasagna. The guest room was ready, but I had already booked a hotel room downtown. I needed space. Not comfort, not conversation, just space to think clearly and sort through what had just happened. The lobby was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that makes you breathe a little deeper. I checked in, took the elevator to the 8th floor, and walked into a room that smelled like lemon and clean linens. I set my bag down, opened my laptop, and began. First, I uploaded the photos I'd taken of the apartment, my bed, the broken perfume bottles, the crayon marks on my desk. Then I scanned the financial documents I'd found hidden behind the luggage in my closet. Mortgage denials, credit card balances, refinancing letters. I added Aunt Grace's comments to a file. Every detail, date stamped and organized. By midnight, I had outlined a list of next steps and possible outcomes. I wrote draft emails. I looked into tenant rights property law and the specifics of our co-ownership agreement. My phone buzzed again. Missed calls, voicemails, text after text. From Kevin. Where did you go last night? Mom is worried. From Mom, "This is childish, Lauren. Call me." From Stephanie, "You're embarrassing Kevin in front of everyone." I turned the phone face down and slid it across the table. Then I called Barbara Reynolds, my attorney. She answered on the second ring. "Lauren, is everything okay?" "Not exactly," I said and told her everything. I spoke slowly, walking through the reunion, the condition of the house, the documents I'd found. She listened quietly, asking a few questions here and there. When I finished, she repeated it back. "So, your brother and mother hosted a large family event in your co-owned property without your consent. They allowed guests into your private apartment, caused damage to your belongings, and now they're asking to buy your share of the home, possibly due to financial distress. Do I have that right?" "Yes. Can you come into my office today at 11, bring the photos and your copy of the agreement?" I was there by 10:55, files in hand. Barbara had already brought in a property law specialist to sit with us. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing the documentation. The original agreement had clear terms: no events over 20 guests without mutual approval, and all private areas to remain off limits unless otherwise agreed upon. I had insisted on those clauses years ago. Now they mattered more than ever. "You have 2 solid options," Barbara explained. "We can file for a partition by sale and force the property to be liquidated, or you can offer Kevin a buyout at full market value plus damages." I looked up. "And if I want to keep my share, then we restructure the agreement, rent out your unit, bring in a management company to handle everything, and draw a clear line between you and them. That way you protect your space and generate income with minimal interaction." I nodded. "And your mother's living arrangement?" I asked. "She occupies the garage unit under mutual consent," the property attorney said. "That agreement can remain in place or be restructured with clear terms." By early afternoon, we had a plan in motion. I would document all damages, secure appraisals, and notify Kevin formally of my intent to enforce the agreement. All communication would be in writing. No more hallway conversations. No more kitchen showdowns. From there, I went to the bank and opened a new safe deposit box. I placed my grandmother's jewelry inside along with a few irreplaceable items. Then I met with my financial advisor to make sure all my personal accounts and assets were properly protected. That evening, I drove back to the house. The street was quiet. The cars were gone. A few folding chairs still sat near the porch, and the trash bins overflowed with paper plates and half-empty soda bottles. Inside the house was in disarray, furniture pushed aside, empty wine bottles tucked in corners, spilled food on the carpet. Upstairs, my apartment looked worse in daylight. My bedding smelled unfamiliar. My desk still had juice stains along the edge. Someone had tried to sweep up the broken perfume bottles, but glass still glittered in the corners of the tile. As I moved through each room, I took pictures, wide angles, and close-ups. Then I sat down to catch my breath. That's when I saw the email from Dr. Winters. He'd copied me on a message to the International Medical Research Consortium in Switzerland. Based on her presentation in Chicago, he wrote, "I strongly recommend Dr. Bennett for the open research position. Her work in targeted therapies is precisely what we need." Attached was the formal invitation, a 3-year appointment in Geneva. Housing provided, full relocation support, a lab team already assembled and waiting. They needed my answer within 2 weeks. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and stepped into the kitchen to make tea. I had just finished pouring water into the kettle when the front door opened. Kevin's voice echoed up the stairs. "Lauren, your car's out front." I didn't answer. He stomped up the stairs and knocked. "You can't just lock yourself away and pretend this didn't happen," he said through the door. "People were worried. Mom is devastated." I texted him, "I'm documenting the condition of the property. Please respect my space. I'll follow up in writing." He knocked twice more, then left. The next morning, I hired a locksmith. By noon, I had new locks on my apartment door and a basic security system installed, motion alerts, door sensors, peace of mind. That afternoon, I scheduled a virtual interview with the Swiss research team. I contacted 3 local cleaning services for estimates, and then I composed the email to Kevin. It was straightforward. I listed the specific violations, attached photos, referenced the co-ownership clauses, and explained my intent to rent out my space through a professional management company. I gave him 2 options: agree to the new structure or pursue a buyout at full market value plus the cost of repairs. Then I did one more thing. I sent a short, courteous message to every relative who had attended the reunion. I thanked them for visiting. I clarified that I had not been informed of the event in advance and that future visits would require notice and consent. I ended the note by sharing news of the Switzerland opportunity and explained that my portion of the property would soon be under professional care. By morning, responses had started coming in. Aunt Patricia called horrified. "Lauren, I had no idea you weren't part of the planning. They said you were too busy and had given your blessing." I thanked her for her honesty. Then I added her statement to my file. Kevin was waiting for me in the kitchen the next morning, phone in hand, his face tight with frustration. "We need to talk about this email you sent," he said, waving the screen like it could change something. "Legal action. Property violations." "Come on, Lauren. This is family, not some kind of business deal." I opened the cabinet, grabbed a travel mug, and poured coffee without looking at him. "I've made my position clear. From now on, I'll be communicating in writing." He leaned on the counter, voice growing sharper. "So this is about money. If you needed something, you could have just said so." I set the lid on the mug and turned toward the door. "This is about respect," I said calmly. "Something that was missing when you turned our home into an event venue without my consent. You're never even here. Always working, always off at some conference. So what does it matter if we use the space when you're gone? It matters because my name is on the deed. Because I helped pay for this house. Because we agreed on paper that my apartment was private." He stepped back as I grabbed my keys. "Mom's beside herself. Stephanie's been crying all morning. This what you're doing, it's tearing everything apart. I suggest you read the agreement carefully," I said. "And talk to your attorney. I have a meeting to get to." I left him standing there, still holding his phone. The meeting was virtual, one final interview with the Switzerland team. Dr. Mueller led the conversation, joined by 2 other senior researchers. They asked thoughtful questions, made space for my responses, and spoke openly about the role they hoped I would fill. When we wrapped up, they thanked me for my time and told me they'd be sending a formal offer by the end of the day. I sat in my car for a while after that, thinking, 3 years abroad, fully funded, leading-edge research, new colleagues, and a fresh start. I didn't drive home. Instead, I stopped at a quiet coffee shop and opened my laptop again. I pulled up a list of local property management companies and dialed the number for one that specialized in co-owned homes. A woman named Jennifer Collins picked up. She listened as I explained my situation, then offered to meet that afternoon. When I arrived at her office, she was already reviewing sample contracts. "We've handled several shared properties," she said, "especially where one party wants to rent and the other doesn't. The key is setting up firm rules from the start: tenant expectations, common space use, financial oversight." We scheduled an inspection for the next morning. I gave her a tour window that guaranteed Kevin would be at work. From there, I went straight to Barbara's office. She had already drafted a revised co-ownership agreement, one that allowed me to rent my portion of the house while retaining ownership. The terms were detailed and exact. "This protects your interests and avoids unnecessary entanglement," Barbara said. "It also puts Kevin in a position where he either accepts the arrangement or buys you out. At market value, plus damages. She had also prepared a formal notice outlining the damage to my property and a cost breakdown for repairs. "We'll send it certified," she said. "You'll want to keep all communications in writing from this point forward." Over the next few days, I started packing items I wanted to take, storing what I didn't, and selling the rest. I filed for my Swiss visa submitted paperwork for a professional leave and blocked Kevin's number from my phone. His messages had shifted from anger to pleading, then back again. "You're blowing this out of proportion. We can fix it. Just call me. Mom's not eating. Her blood pressure's up. The doctor says it's stress." "Is that what you want?" I didn't respond. When my mother texted that she might need to go to urgent care, I replied only with, "I'm sorry to hear that. I've included your coverage details below. Please keep me posted." The next morning, Jennifer Collins arrived right on time for the property inspection. She carried a clipboard, a camera, and a quiet professionalism that didn't waver once, not even when Kevin unexpectedly came home during the walkthrough. "Who is this?" he asked, stepping into the hallway. "I'm Jennifer Collins from Elite Property Management," she said, barely looking up. "Dr. Bennett has engaged us to prepare her unit for rental." Kevin blinked. "Rental? What rental?" "She's fully within her rights," Jennifer said. "The agreement permits. It provided proper management is in place. We'll be overseeing all tenant selection, maintenance, and financial reporting." He followed us through the apartment, trying to interject. I let Jennifer do the talking. When it became clear I wouldn't engage, he gave up and stepped outside to call Mom. She showed up half an hour later, walking through the front door like she still had a key to every part of the house. "I want to talk," she said, pushing into my office. I kept packing my books. "You're tearing this family apart," she said. "Over what?" "A few guests. Some bent rules." "This isn't personal," I said. "I'm exercising my legal rights under the agreement we all signed." Her voice wavered. "You're bringing strangers into our home. You've got lawyers sending letters to your own brother. What am I supposed to think I looked up? This wouldn't be happening if my space had been respected, if anyone had thought to include me. We're family, Lauren. We shouldn't need contracts and legal forms to treat each other decently." I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "I heard something about Switzerland. Are you really leaving?" "For 3 years," I said. "Geneva. I've accepted a research post with the medical consortium." Her shoulders sank. "You're just going to walk away?" "My institution supports the move. My portion of the house will be managed professionally, and I'll stay in contact with those who respect boundaries." Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't move. She left without another word. Later that afternoon, I received a message from Kevin's attorney requesting a meeting. We scheduled it for the end of the week at Barbara's office. The formal offer from Switzerland came through that evening. I accepted it. The countdown had started. We met on a Wednesday afternoon in Barbara's downtown office. Kevin came in with his attorney, a man in his early 50s with a heavy briefcase and a habit of clearing his throat before every sentence. Barbara had already set the tone, neutral professional, with a printed agenda on the table and copies of the co-ownership agreement in front of each of us. Kevin sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes tired. His attorney began, "My client is willing to make a purchase offer for Ms. Bennett's portion of the property. However, given the recent changes and complications surrounding potential rental, we believe a 15% reduction in market value is reasonable." Barbara didn't flinch. "That won't be accepted. We're offering 2 paths forward. Either Kevin purchases Lauren's share at full market value, including documented damages, or he agrees to the revised arrangement with the property management firm. The terms are clear and enforceable." There was a pause. Kevin looked over, avoiding my eyes. "Come on, Lauren. You're really going to rent out your rooms to strangers." "You want Mom dealing with that while you're off in Switzerland?" Barbara interjected. "Her name is on the deed. She is within her rights." "We're not talking about rights," Kevin said, leaning forward. "We're talking about family." I stayed quiet. 2 hours passed with offers and counter-offers, small adjustments, careful wording. But it became clear Kevin couldn't afford to buy me out. Not at full value, not with the numbers on those loan rejections I'd found. The property management agreement stood as the only viable option. As the meeting wrapped up, Kevin pushed back from the table. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "Move across the world and lock me into this setup just to make a point?" I stood and gathered my papers. This isn't about a point. It's about protecting my investment and continuing my work. He didn't speak again. That night I finalized the onboarding paperwork for the research consortium. The visa process was already moving forward. I notified the management company to begin tenant screening immediately. Cleaning crews arrived the next morning, scrubbing down the space and patching up minor repairs. Madison came by the next evening to help me box up the last of my things. We folded sweaters in silence for a while, then she looked over. "You ready for this?" "I think so." She smiled and reached into her purse, pulling out a slim notebook. "Travel journal. For all the things you'll never want to forget." The night before my flight, I stayed at her house. Her husband made tea. They didn't ask many questions. After dinner, we sat around the dining table. Madison raised her glass. "To new beginnings in Switzerland," her husband added, "and to knowing when a bridge isn't worth rebuilding." We clinked glasses. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. By morning, my phone had 47 missed calls, mostly from Kevin and Mom, a few from cousins who had just now heard what was going on. I didn't answer any of them. 2 weeks after settling into my apartment in Geneva, I got another alert, 105 missed calls. Kevin's number appeared over and over. There were voicemails, some short, some shouting. The last one had been left at 3:47 a.m. Boston time. "Rachel, the property manager is showing your unit to a tenant today. They say I can't stop them. This is my house too. You need to call me back or I swear." The message cut off mid-sentence. I forwarded it to Barbara with a note, "Ongoing communication, despite requests to cease. Please advise." She replied within the hour, all documented. "Let the management company proceed. You focus on your work. We'll take care of things here." And I did. My lab team was small but sharp people from Kenya, Brazil, South Korea, and Germany, all focused on a shared goal. We worked long hours. We shared meals. We spoke with quiet urgency about what we were trying to build. One afternoon, Dr. Imani, a biochemist from Nairobi, looked up from her notes. "Your work on receptor targeting, very precise. It's good to finally meet someone who doesn't need a spotlight to make real progress." Later that same week, our team lead printed a journal article featuring one of my early publications. He hung it on the bulletin board in the main hallway right next to the coffee machine. No one made a big deal of it. But they saw it. They saw me. Back in Boston, Barbara sent updates. Week 1. The property manager secured a lease with a visiting professor from UCLA. Kevin tried to block the move-in. The firm reminded him of the agreement. He backed down. Week 2. First month's rent deposited. The management company subtracted repair costs and fees, then wired the rest. Week 3. Kevin hired a new attorney to challenge the management agreement. Barbara said the case had no legal merit, but told me to be prepared for more of the same. Kevin's messages kept coming. The tone shifted. Anger gave way to guilt. The guy they moved in keeps weird hours. Mom's uncomfortable. Dad would have never let this happen to the family. At least tell me how long you're going to keep punishing us. Mom's tone followed a different pattern. I've never been so embarrassed. Everyone's asking where you went. My doctor put me on anxiety medication because of all this. Then 6 weeks in, she sent something different. Maybe we should have told you about the reunion. I answered simply, yes, you should have. A few hours later, she wrote back, you always kept yourself apart. We assumed you wouldn't care. I took my time, then replied, I was never invited. I didn't even know most of those gatherings were happening. She wrote again 2 days later. I'm trying to understand your side. That was all. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. In Geneva, life began to take shape. My apartment overlooked a quiet street. The mornings were cool. The coffee shop downstairs always remembered my order. Every Friday, our lab held a team lunch, just sandwiches and bottled water around a table, but no one talked over each other. No one fought to be heard. One day Madison called from back home. You sound lighter, she said. It's like you've been carrying something for years and you finally put it down. Maybe I have. You know, she added, family isn't just who you're born to. It's who you choose to build a life with. I looked out at the quiet street thinking of the lab, the calm, the rhythm of this new place. I was starting to believe that too. It was a little over 6 months into my time in Geneva when the email came in. The subject line was simple from Kevin. He'd sent it late at night Boston time. I read it twice before I realized I was holding my breath. He wrote from our father's old study, said the tenant was at a conference and the property manager had let him in to fix a plumbing issue in the shared bathroom. Being in this house without you feels strange, he wrote. I keep thinking I'll hear you upstairs typing or coming down for coffee. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't deflection either. Mom keeps saying you abandoned the family, he continued. But the more I sit here, the more I wonder if maybe we abandoned you first. Long before you ever left. Then came the part that made me stop and sit down. Stephanie's pregnant. We just found out last week. It's made me think about the kind of father I want to be, what kind of family we're going to build. I don't have all the answers, but I'm finally asking the questions I probably should have asked years ago. He closed with a line about my work. Your research made the paper here, something about clinical trials. Mom clipped the article. It's on the fridge, even if she pretends it's not. I didn't respond right away. The next morning, I opened my laptop and reread the draft update we were preparing for our partners. Our early trials were showing progress tumor reduction in 78% of cases, with fewer side effects than standard treatments. I wrote him back later that night. Congratulations on the baby. That's big news. The trials are still early, but we're optimistic. It could change how we approach certain cancers. I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine between us, but I appreciate your message. The house always felt more like your dream than mine. My work is where I live now, and for the first time I'm surrounded by people who value what I contribute. Tell Mom I'm glad she kept the article. He didn't reply right away. But a few days later, I received another message, short but more thoughtful. He shared a blurry ultrasound photo and said they'd chosen the name Emily if it was a girl. Our exchanges stayed occasional, measured, honest, no forced warmth, no grand reconciliation. But the tone had shifted. There was space now where before there'd been walls. Mom began to add brief lines to Kevin's messages. Hope you're sleeping okay, she wrote once. The neighbor's son just left for Germany reminds me of you. I'm using the new laundry schedule. It's fine, just different. The management company sent regular updates. The tenant had renewed for another year. Rent was stable. Repairs had been minimal. Kevin had stopped challenging the arrangement. One afternoon in late spring, Barbara forwarded me a formal offer. Kevin was ready to buy out my share of the house at full market value. He'd secured financing through Stephanie's family and a new mortgage. Your decision, Barbara wrote. The rental is working, but this would give you a clean break if that's what you want. That evening, I had dinner with my research team. We sat on a terrace overlooking the city. After the meal, I brought it up. What would selling mean to you? Lucia asked. She was a neurologist from Brazil, soft-spoken and sharp-eyed. Freedom, I said. But also closure. Maybe. Or said Mark, one of our imaging specialists, maybe it's not about ending something. Maybe it's just where your story moves forward. After dinner, I went home and thought about it. Not the numbers, not the paperwork, just what it would feel like to no longer be tied to that house. I wrote back to Barbara the next morning. I would accept the offer, but with two conditions. First, that a portion of the proceeds would go toward a scholarship in our father's name focused on students pursuing cancer research. Second, that my mother's right to live in the garage apartment would be formally protected for life. Barbara drafted the final agreement. The papers were signed within 2 weeks. The funds transferred cleanly. No resistance, no delays. The house was no longer mine. But something else had settled something that hadn't been whole in years. I was scheduled to speak at a conference in Boston a few months later. I let Kevin know. He asked if I'd like to meet for dinner. We met at a quiet restaurant in the South End. Stephanie came too with baby Emily. She was 2 months old, round-cheeked and wide-eyed, her tiny fingers curling around mine when Kevin handed her over. "She's got Dad's eyes," I said quietly. Mom arrived a few minutes later. She looked older, smaller, but when our eyes met, she didn't look away. The conversation was stiff at first, polite, careful. We talked about the weather, work, the baby's feeding schedule. No one mentioned the house or the reunion. As we got up to leave, Mom touched my arm. "Will you have time for breakfast before you go back? I have meetings for the next few days," I said. "But Sunday morning is open." She nodded. "I'd like that." We didn't hug, but we didn't avoid each other either. Back in my hotel room, I sat by the window and looked out over the city I used to call home. It didn't feel like mine anymore. And for the first time, that felt okay. Sunday morning came quietly. I met my mother at a small diner not far from where I used to catch the bus to school. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in front of her, half full and untouched. We exchanged a quiet greeting, then opened our menus. No small talk. Just a slow kind of stillness that comes when both people know too much has happened to pretend otherwise. The waitress brought water and took our orders. Mom asked for oatmeal with berries. I asked for eggs and toast. After a while, she folded her hands on the table. "I saw the article again," she said. "The one about your research. Kevin sent it to a few relatives." I nodded. "The trials are moving into the next phase. We've had approval for expansion." She looked down at her napkin, then up at me. "Your father would have been so proud." I didn't say anything at first. Then I set my fork down. "I kept thinking about what he'd do," I said. "Through all of it." Mom nodded. "I know." There was a pause, long but not heavy. "I signed the final paperwork last month," she said. "The house is in Kevin's name now. My part stays as it was, like you asked." I sipped my coffee. "Thank you." She looked outside at the sidewalk where a couple walked past, pushing a stroller. "Do you think," she asked softly, "you'll ever move back?" "I don't know," I said. "Geneva feels like home now. We didn't try to fix anything else. There wasn't a grand moment of healing. But as she reached across the table and touched my wrist just briefly, it felt like something unspoken had shifted. Later that week, I flew back to Switzerland. The skies were clear when we landed. That evening, I returned to the lab, greeted by familiar faces and the quiet rhythm of a space built on shared purpose. My name had been added to the door outside our unit, Dr. Lauren Bennett, Oncology Research Lead. There was a small bouquet on my desk, no card, just a bundle of wildflowers and a single wrapped chocolate. Lucia walked by and smiled. "Welcome back." We fell back into work as if I'd never left. Meetings, revisions, long hours. But I noticed it more now, the way this space held room for me. The way I didn't have to fight to be seen. One afternoon, during a review of trial data, Dr. Chun looked up from his screen. "We're seeing better than expected results in the second batch," he said. "Lower inflammation rates, higher response." We all leaned in closer, nodding. No celebration, no clapping, just quiet confirmation that what we were building might actually help someone. That night I walked home along the lake. The city lights reflected across the water. I passed a bakery just closing for the evening, the scent of warm bread drifting into the air. I thought about Kevin, about the last email he'd sent after our dinner in Boston. Emily started smiling. Every time I say sister, she kicks her feet. We keep your graduation photo in the living room. Stephanie says it's the only picture where you're actually relaxed. I hadn't responded yet, but I saved it. Mom had written too, a shorter message. Thanks for breakfast. You look tired, but content. I hope you are. I walked a little slower that night, letting the cool air settle on my face. Back at my apartment, I opened a new message from Barbara. The scholarship paperwork is complete. The James A. Bennett Research Grant will launch in the fall, 2 recipients per year renewable. There was a PDF attached. The header included my father's name in bold. I printed a copy and taped it inside my closet door. The next morning, we received word that one of our early trial patients had shown full remission after 3 rounds. Our team gathered in the back hallway, speaking in soft tones, not wanting to disturb the lab. Someone brought out coffee. Dr. Imani smiled and raised her cup. To progress, she said, and to the quiet victories no one else sees. I glanced around the circle of faces, my team, my peers, my chosen space. Later that evening, I took the long route home, past the museum, through the park. I sat for a while on a bench watching the lights flicker on across the city, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had anything to prove. It's been a 1.5 years since I left Boston. Since that night, I came home early to a house full of strangers, to a banner I hadn't been invited to stand under, and to a family I no longer recognized. Now, I live in a quiet corner of Geneva, in a 3rd-floor apartment with wide windows and soft light in the mornings. I still keep the photo of my dad and me taped inside my closet door, just where I can see it while lacing my shoes before work. Most days start the same. Early lab meetings, long hours in the research wing, and the steady rhythm of progress, measured not in applause, but in patient scans and clean test results in silence where there once was fear. The work is slow and delicate, but it's the kind of slow that matters. It's rooted, focused, and when we see a breakthrough, it doesn't need celebration. Just a quiet nod, a deeper breath, and the knowledge that something good is finally beginning. I still hear from Kevin, not often, but enough. His messages come without pressure now. Pictures of Emily in the park, small updates about the house. He writes with a steadier voice, like someone who's stopped trying to win and started trying to understand. Mom sends notes too, usually short. Sometimes just a photo of her garden or a recipe clipped from the paper. Last fall, she mailed me one of Dad's old cufflinks, polished and wrapped in tissue. No explanation. Just a folded card that said, "For what you carry forward." The scholarship in Dad's name launched quietly. 2 students were selected for its first round, both working in oncology, both from working-class families. When I saw their bios in the press packet, I paused for a moment, just taking it in. What we pass on sometimes begins not with fanfare, but with someone deciding to keep going, even when the door closes. And as for the house, it's no longer mine, but I don't miss it. What I kept from that place isn't the structure or the keys or the square footage. It's the understanding that peace is not something someone else gives you. It's something you claim when you finally draw a line and mean it. That line gave me space to build a life I never thought I'd be allowed to have. Not one measured by someone else's expectations or by where I sat at the dinner table, but one shaped by purpose, by earned rest, by choosing where and with whom I belong. Sometimes the people closest to us are the last ones to see who we really are, and sometimes the loudest rooms are the ones where we feel the most invisible. But even so, there's always a choice to stay small and agreeable, or to walk out the door, pack a bag, and build something better. So if you're listening to this, and you've ever been made to feel like a guest in your own story, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence to keep their comfort. You don't need permission to protect your peace. Sometimes the bravest thing we do isn't fighting back. It's stepping away and learning how to live full and free without looking back. Thanks for staying with me through this story. If it stirred something in you, take a moment to share your thoughts or just let someone know they're not alone. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, you're welcome to stay a while. I'll be right here. Until next time, take care of your heart. You deserve that. Always.